Okay, now let's start a new program. That is program to show the use of access specifiers. Remember what are access specifiers? Public and private. So data members are made as private, and generally the member functions are declared as public so that they can be accessed from outside the class. Okay, so here what we are going to do is we are going to create a class called let's say date, okay, which will have day, month and year. Okay, we need to provide appropriate member functions. Okay, let's see what happens. Okay, so as usual we start off with include iostream.h. okay, hash include conio.h, and then we create the class. Let's call it as date itself. Okay, class date, and now we need to specify the member data members. Now what are the members that we require? We require dd, mm and yy, right? Now each of them should be what? They should be int, right? So we can declare it like this, or we can put it in independent lines: int dd semicolon int mm semicolon int yy, or we can take a shortcut like this. What we could also do is we could say private int dd. Now the problem here is only the dd will become private, right? So it's always better for simplicity's sake also to readability point of view also to keep it on separate lines. Now that is one thing. Second thing is doesn't make sense to say private 3 things or 4 times or 5 times depending on the number of data members that you have. So what you can do is provide a label kind of thing. So you just have to mention it once. So int yy. Okay, now we are going to have member functions. So these have to be public, not necessarily have to be. It when we come into complicated classes, we might have some member functions which are meant only to for internal use of the class. So there we might not want the member function, this particular member function, to be called from outside. So in such a case we might make it as private. Okay, so the member function would be void date int dd comma int mm comma int yy, right? And what does this function actually do? What it will do is it will initialize. Okay, now this should not be, let's make it more meaningful. Let's make it as month, since this is a class definition, class specification. Okay, the function will be called and 3 ints will be passed, right? So what we are going to do is store those variables into these data members. So day is equal to dd, month is equal to mm, and year is equal to yy. Okay, so we have initialized the data members. So now we need to display it. Now remember, these are all the initial stages. So some of the programs that we are writing may be quite simple and may seem too simple. Okay, but remember these are early days. So the idea is to get familiar with and become comfortable with the various aspects. Okay, Now we need to put a tab. So this is how we put a tab. Then day, we want to display the day, and then we want to display slash day. We want to have a tab. Okay, then we display the day, and then we need to display the slash, right? So slash, okay, and then we need to display the month, and then again we need to display a slash, and then we need to display the year. Okay, and then we go to the next line. Okay, so that's what this class does. This class has 3 data members and it has a function. When this function is called with the appropriate parameters, it initializes the day, month and year data members and displays the date appropriately. So that is as far as the class is concerned. Now we need to be able to create various date objects and display the dates. Okay, so for that we create a main, int main. Okay, int not required because we are not returning anything. Okay, so void main, and as usual clear screen, and then remember we have to create an instance. Now how do we create an instance? We treat the class name as the let's rename this date as create date. Later on it will become clear why I'm changing this name. Okay, we need to remember I said a class, when we create it, it becomes a type, or rather a user defined type. Okay, and so I use this type and I create a variable. So let's call it as date1. And once I have created it, let's create another one, date2. And once I have created it, I can call that function create date and pass it 3 variables, 3 parameters. Okay, so the parameters is let's say 1, 1, 20, 17, right? That is 1. A date2, create date, and let's say 5, 6, 20, 17, right? So this is the second one. Okay, and then we ask it to wait so that we can see what is happening, because when I call this function, it's supposed to display the date, so I should be able to see it. Let's run it and see any errors. Oh great, no errors, and it's displaying it perfectly. 1, 1, 20, 17, 5, 6, 20, 17. Okay, so perfect. Now as I said, create date. Why did I change it from date to create date? Is because the class name, when you give a function name the same as the class name, it has a special meaning. Okay, what are called as constructors, right? So a constructor function is will have always the same name as the class name. We will look at this later. That is why I didn't want to confuse the whole thing, so that's why I changed the function name. Okay, so got the idea? Now let's save this. Okay, let's save it in source and let's save it as date class. Okay, date class, and let's say okay. Let's come here and say okay, and window, close, file, quit.